Hello knitters, Barbara Benson here. I'm an independent knitwear designer who also likes to make videos here on my YouTube channel, Watch Barbara Knit. If you'd like to know more about my knitwear designs, please check in the description below, and there you will find a link to my Ravelry page where you can get one of my patterns and see everything I have available and maybe knit one up for yourself. Also in the description below you will find a link to the Watch Barbara Knits Facebook group, a place where we can continue the conversations that we start here on the YouTube and share pictures. But as always, I love it when people chat to me in the comments below. So if you are so moved or have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. Now, this is the video that I had planned on making last week, but then my sinuses decided to not allow me to make last week. It is the Ask Me Anything Knitting Edition, the first one of the year. So Ask Me Anything is kind of one of those things you see it on Reddit. And the idea is, just ask me any kind of question and I will do my best to answer it. This is the knitting edition because I strongly encourage you to ask me knitting or fiber related questions. I have a P.O. box if you have a question for me. What I ask is that you write it down with paper, pen. You can put it in a card, if you want to, but postcards is what I really think is super fun to get. My P.O. box number is P.O. Box 15467, Sarasota, Florida 34277. I will put it in the description link below for you to check it out. But if you come up with a question you'd like to ask me, please send me a postcard. I make these when I have enough that I think it will make a good video. I have been saving up a little bit and I'm a little bit behind, but I have these and I have these, and these I'm going to address first. These are not actually questions, but they are lovely holiday cards that were sent to me and I wanted to show. If you sent it to me, you know you did. Thank you so much. Look at this one. It's a crab in a Santa hat. I love it. Thank you. And then this is a lovely, and it's in German, which is super cool, and it's shiny. Thank you so very much. I got it. Thank you for sending it. And then finally, I got this one, which is got a postcard in it. And it's funny because, oh my goodness, I dropped it. Fingers. Because this lovely lady, Mary C., who has written me before, and I'm enjoying the repeat correspondence. So if you've written me one, don't worry about that. Write again. She wrote this postcard and then read an interview I did, and the question was answered. So it was, what is Tumped Duck? And Tumped Duck is my company name. I came up with it because I needed something unique, and I will link to the article she's referring to below that explains it. I think I might have even mentioned it on a video before, but thank you. I wanted to show y'all this postcard. Many businesses failed during the Great Depression, but the popcorn business thrived. When the television era began in the 1950s, popcorn sales decreased, but as popcorn became readily available to be made at home, the snack's popularity rose once again. Fun facts! I didn't know that about popcorn. I do like popcorn, and thank you, Mary, for sending this on to me, even though you already knew the answer to your question. Now, on to the questions that I have. I have 4 here that I'm going to answer today. I do have a 5th, and I want you, Robin, to know that I do have this one, but this one is going to take a little bit. I want to make sure I can answer it thoroughly, and I think it would take too long for this one. But just know, Robin, I have it, and that will be the first question answered in the next edition of this episode. Are these episodes I'm not legit TV, but can I call it episodes? Who knows? So I have, and speaking of repeat writers, these all appear to be from the same person, which I am super excited that you took the time to write me these. So thank you, Elizabeth. The first one is the Chateau de Talhuet A hotel located in southern Brittany has 8 unique rooms for guests to enjoy while visiting France. And Elizabeth is not in France. Apparently, she just found the random postcard, which I think is super fun. I used to go to antique stores and junk stores all the time, and finding really old, fun postcards is I think a fantastic idea. If anybody else wants to do that, I'd love to see the weirdest thing you can find. Might want to keep it PG though. She says, not where I am or have ever been, but hey, with a postcard, you're almost there. Just a found postcard. Questions. Do you keep a knitting journal? Do you think there is value in using one? Can you recommend a good one? What page features do you think are important? Thanks, Elizabeth. I have not ever kept so not a word. I have not ever kept a knitting journal, except for the fact that the patterns that you actually see on my Ravelry page that you available, it's kind of a knitting journal. So what I do is I usually design and I write up as much as I can and I print it out, and I have, you know how if you knit something, you make notes all over sometimes the pattern? That's what I do on my draft patterns, and I make draft after draft. So those pages and pages that I have when I'm designing are theoretically kind of my journal, but then once it's done, I write the actual pattern, and that actual pattern is essentially my journal page. So I don't really I've not used one, but the closest thing I have is using the notebook feature in Ravelry as a digital one, and it has all kinds of fantastic ways. So if you're into digital, I highly recommend the Ravelry notebook function, and it is very, very deep. But I am anticipating, Elizabeth, that you are looking for an actual paper journal, and there are some amazing ones out there. I have not used one, but what I would think would be important is you would need a place to record. You know, you would want to write down the name of the pattern, possibly the designer, what needle you used, what yarn you used. I always weigh my yarn before I use it, so I know how much. Once you've done your gauge swatch, to write down the actual gauge in stitches per inch and rows per inch that you've gotten. Maybe even write down, if you've had to go through multiple gauges, like try different needles, write down what gauge you get with each needle. So then if you use that yarn, if you want to use that yarn again, you can actually know and write down the exact needle. Don't just write size 7 needle, right? Size 7 Chow-Gu red lace. Write down exactly the needle you used. So if you know exactly the yarn you used and exactly the needle you used, if you need to do something at that gauge again, you know a combination that actually is going to work for you. Also make sure you write if it's done in the round or flat, because that's going to change your gauge. But being able to record your yarn, and then a good space to write notes to yourself. So it's essentially, you need all that detail information for you to write things down. Maybe even little spaces to make little drawings if that's something you're into. But page features, yarn, needles, gauge, pattern name. You might even want to write down the dates, like how long you spent on it. Started this date, ended this date. If you're really obsessive, you can like write down each day how much time you use. But I don't know that I would want to know because sometimes things take me a long time. And if I knew how long it took, I might not try it again. So, but I would ask all my viewers, if you use a knitting journal and a specific one, please let us know in the comments below, and maybe Elizabeth might find one that she likes, and I would definitely check them out if you recommend it and see what it looks like, and maybe we can get further into this knitting journal thing, because hey, who doesn't like paper things? I have notebooks, like I have this one, my tiny captain's log, where I record some stuff, and I have this one, and these are all just the notebooks I do use. They're just gonna be like completely blank, and I just write stuff in it. So formalized journal with spaces I don't use. You know, Another thing I thought would be interesting is to, instead of using like a journal, using like a big like manila envelope that has the information on the front. And then if you have any swatches or stuff, you can actually, in ball bands and things, you could actually keep it with it. So that's a possibility. Okay, Elizabeth. And I believe this is also, I don't know if this is the same Elizabeth. The handwriting looks similar. Look at this awesome card. It is in, I believe either Chinese or Japanese, and it's got all of these old-fashioned Disney characters on it. And it says Tokyo Disney Resort. So that is an awesome postcard. Okay, question. Do you have a yarn stash? If so, how do you organize it? Any tips on how to use stash yarn before purchasing new yarn? Not knowing what is in your stash, for fun, can you design one of your future projects with one of your stash yarns? Please let us know if you do. So, I have a video that I made before I moved that was taking you through my yarn stash. It has been pruned down considerably because I got rid of a lot of yarn before I moved. The way I did that was by tasking the ladies in my different knitting groups if they wanted to come over to my house. Actually, we went to someone else's house who had more space, and I just kind of had a little yarn sale. It's kind of so I did de-stash a lot. But I will link to that because yes, I have a yarn stash. I am not immune to that. And tips on how to use stash yarn before purchasing new yarn. So if you have a specific yarn you want to use, and I know I've already mentioned them, I would go to Ravelry. And what you can do is put that yarn in Ravelry, and when you do that, there's a place where you can click. Once you pull up that yarns page, you can see what other projects other people have made in that very yarn. And you might want to browse those and see if you get any inspiration from that to see what other people have done with that yarn. Otherwise, you can use the advanced Ravelry pattern search and search based on the specifics, like its worsted weight, how much yardage you have, and things like that, and narrow it down. I think Ravelry is really your best bet for using stash yarn. Now, if you are completely organized, you could use the stash function of Ravelry, take pictures of everything you have, enter it in, and then when you look at a new pattern, like a pattern, it will suggest, it says, you have this yarn in your stash, and Ravelry will tell you that. I mean, really, Ravelry is magic. But yes, deciding you want to use that yarn and then finding a pattern that uses that yarn, or vice versa, find the pattern you really want to do and just look through your stash and see if you have something that's appropriate to it before you go out and buy something else. I do have over here on my shelves like yarns that I need to design in, and I actually keep them. They're not where I normally store things. Actually, I also have scrap yarn in here. They're not where I normally store things. It's like these are kind of like if you will forgive me a baseball analogy, they're on deck. They're waiting. I keep them there where I can see them so that I know that I have intentions of using that, so it's in my brain and keeps it fresh. I'm very bad at organizing my yarn. I will link, I do have one where I talked about it. I keep my yarn in big weatherproof sealed like clip top totes, but they have very little organizational style. It's kind of sort of like I have one tub that this is all my special yarn. It's a lot of the indie sock yarn I've bought. It is stuff that is not readily available, so it is stuff that I know that I'm not going to be designing with, because I don't like to design with something that my customers can't really get a hold of. So if it's something that's discontinued or something that it was like a limited thing, I have that tub. So I have one tub of this is just my yarn and it's not for design. And then I roughly sort things by yarn weight. But in reality, I don't organize it very well. It's all in tubs in the top of my closet. Sorry, I'm not a little more organized about that. And I mentioned this as far as with my stash yarns. I've been contemplating again, it's these specific yarns that I have right here. I got them. This is my Fat Bunny yarn. And this awesome, it's Sunshine Dye Works. Yeah, I know guac costs extra. This is fingering. And then this beautiful hand-dyed cotton yarn from Birdie's Knits. I got all these indies. And I'm thinking about trying to do a series of patterns that I'm going to call impulse buy patterns. It'll mostly be one skein and using these yarns that I just bought on impulse with nothing in mind. But it's on my list. I will let y'all know when I do that. And so I consider this my stash, but this is like fresh stash, not well-aged stash. But if I use my stash, I'll let you know. That's a great question, Elizabeth. And then I got another one from Elizabeth. Y'all, she's hogging it, so you better write in. But don't let that stop you from writing. I love these. And these are cool trees. Don't know what kind of trees they are? I bet this thing will tell me. Redwood National and State Parks. Reproductive buds which fail to develop into healthy trunks grow into burls, curious knots of woody tissue. That's interesting. I think that the pictures are close up. Burl. Burl is kind of a fun. Maybe I'll make a pattern and name it Burl. Hi, Barbara. When you're not designing a new pattern for us, do you knit items for yourself or family member? Do you use patterns of other designers or create new patterns as you knit the project? Do some of your designs come from something you are creating for yourself? So I really don't knit except for my what I consider work knitting. I used to knit for pleasure and just for fun, just to make stuff. But nowadays I'm pretty much anything I'm knitting, I feel guilty if I'm not working on something new because I want to get it out and I have so many ideas that I just need to get to. So I do not really knit for my family. Actually, a couple years ago, my son needed a new hat and I worked at a yarn store and I bought one of the samples. So he does have a hand knit hat. I just didn't knit it. I have knit for family members occasionally, but not with any frequency. And when I do, it's something small like fingerless mitts or a hat. I feel kind of guilty now that I don't, but it's just now. One thing I do, and I have quite a few patterns for several years when Elliot, my son, was in elementary school, I would knit each year for his teacher as a holiday gift, but those were always new patterns. I really felt like if I'm going to be knitting this, I should at least be making a new pattern that I can then release. But frequently what it was is I would knit the piece, gift it, and then knit another version in it in a more, I would actually knit those from stash and then knit a second version of it to photograph that was in more available yarn. Some of the examples for that would be McClanahan. It is a Mobius cowl, was like that. And what else did I do that with? Oh, I Can't Control My Brain. That hat was knit for one of my son's teachers. There's several of them like that. And so that is one. So it's not for family, but you know, your teachers really deserve something nice. But now that he's in middle school, there's so many teachers I haven't knit that. But yes, so even if I am knitting a gift type item, it is going to be a new pattern. I have knit from other designers' patterns, but I don't have a lot of time to do that. That doesn't mean I don't buy other designers' patterns. When I see a designer's pattern that I really like, I will frequently purchase it simply to, I kind of consider it saying, yay, I like that, and just to support that designer because I want to see more work from them. And frequently I'll just read the pattern and kind of like knit it in my brain so that I have an idea of how it worked because they did something particularly interesting. So I do acquire patterns, but I rarely knit from them because I feel like I have work knitting to do. So I think that answers. There is one specific pattern though that was something I was knitting. The last time I'm just going to knit something for myself it ended up being Irulan. And let me tell you, I learned something from that because I was like, I'm just going to knit. Well, first I wanted to learn how to do a garter tab. So I made a garter tab and I'm like, I'm just going to knit a garter shawl. I got really bored. So I'm like, maybe I'll add a little something. And it really was just very organic. I was like, I'm going to start here. And then I did this and I did this. And it grew into Irulan. And then when I decided I'm like, this is really pretty. I should write it up. I didn't write any notes when I did it. So I had to retroactively figure out what I had done. And that is why I have the process I talked about, journaling. Now I write everything down because reverse engineering my own pattern was quite possibly one of the most annoying things I've ever done. It was such a pain. But I do love the pattern. So Irulan is one that I knit for myself. But then I couldn't resist turning it into a pattern. So I've just kind of given up. I like knitting. And finally, this is from Jimmy C73 and something about Leicester is pronounced Leicester. I love this postcard. Harry Trotter. So, this is Bury St. Edmunds, United Kingdom. That's so exciting to get something from, and look, there's pictures of the Queen. Dear Barbara, greetings from the United Kingdom. I had been trying to find you a Slytherin postcard, but no avail. Then I saw this. I really appreciate the thought. Slytherin would be awesome, but I love Harry Trotter. So, love the podcasts and patterns. Currently procrastinating casting on Sardaukar and the easy lace crescent-shaped shawl. I will tell you, you inspired me when trying to decide what to put on my silent partner here, Sardaukar. Here you go. So I hope this inspires you to cast it on. Sardaukar is for me, and the shawl is an early Xmas stash knitting. So there you go, stash knitting, make a shawl. Been trying to think of a question for you, and all I can think of is yarn related. It's probably been covered already, but here goes. I grew up on lace weight, 4-ply, DK, and Aran, and it get very confused by fingering worsted sock. Where do they fit into the yarny spectrum? And she told me that Leicester, Leicester is pronounced Leicester. So now I know how to pronounce that. Okay. So I will tell you that all of this 4-ply, 3-ply, 2-ply business confuses the snot out of me. So we're on even footing there. And I do have a video about yarn weights, and I will link to it to go below, but there is no reason not to address it again because it is definitely something that bears repeating. So in the United Kingdom, the weights are referred to by plies, and I find it very confusing because for me, ply is all about the structure of the yarn. So when someone says it's 4-ply, but it's a single, I get very confused because a single is 1-ply. And in the UK, they use ply to refer to weight, which is how thick the yarn is. So as far as fitting the more Americanized wording into the UK mindset, this is how I figured it out. And honestly, I'm not 100% sure what 4-ply is. So, but what I can say is, so you have knitting weight, and I use my hand and I think of knitting weight as my pinky finger. In the United States, knitting weight is also called fingering or sock weight. Okay. I'm going to tell you, I just cheated and went and pulled up something, so now I understand. So 4-ply is fingering weight. So you've got, it's called knitting weight, it's called fingering weight, it's called sock weight, it's called 4-ply. All of these describe a thin yarn that is usually between 400 and 440 yards per 100 grams. That's in wool. And that is one of your thinner yarn. There is thinner than 4-ply / fingering is lace weight, but it's so thin it's off my hand. So knitting weight, if you double knitting weight, you get DK weight. DK stands for double knitting. So I think of DK weight as being like a middle weight, right? And that is also called 8-ply. If you double DK weight, you get Aran weight, okay? Which is 10-ply. So fingering weight, you double fingering, you get double knitting, double that, you get Aran weight. Now, Americans can't leave well enough alone, so we came in and we created sport weight. Sport weight falls between, it's on this finger, fingering and double knitting. So it goes fingering or 4-ply, sport, double knitting, and then between DK and Aran, we've got worsted weight. Okay? So it's fingering or 4-ply, sport, DK, worsted, Aran. If you double sport, you roughly get worsted. If you double DK, you roughly get Aran. Again, falling off the hand, if you double worsted, you get bulky. If you double Aran, you get super bulky. Half of knitting weight is lace weight. Does that make sense? So if you double lace, you get fingering. I know it's complicated, but that's why I use my hand. So knitting, sport or fingering, sport, DK, worsted, Aran. It goes from skinny to fat. Okay. I hope that that was helpful. It's just a rehash. I'll put a link in the description below to when I originally talked about that. The plies, though, there's also, I'll put a link to the Ravelry thing. It's a little bit of demystification on that because I find the plies, because there's so many different yarn structures, you have cable ply, you have multiple, I mean, you can have like single ply fingering weight yarn. So in UK terminology, that would be a single 4-ply, which makes no sense to me. It's slightly confusing. If y'all think I just made a hot mess of that, please let me know in the comments below, and maybe I'll try to clarify it a little bit better. But thank you so much, Jimmy C73, for my lovely Harry Trotter postcard. Thank you, Elizabeth, for these. They're awesome questions. I really hope to get some more questions from y'all. I look forward to hearing what you come up with. Also, remember, if you use a knitting journal, tell me in the comments below and I can take a look at it. And I'm already one postcard into my next AMA. So usually I need 4 or 5 to chat about. So keep these coming and we'll have the next one as soon as I have enough. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Click that like button. And if you would like to be notified whenever I upload a new video, please subscribe to my channel and select notifications. Thank you so much.